Welcome to Baby Boomer Tales. My name's Jim. Thank you for riding along today. I really do appreciate it. I really do. We're going to try something here, and what it is the top 10 55 years ago. We've been doing that for over 6 years now, and it's been great. I do the top 10 popular songs of that week 55 years ago. So if we did that today, it'd be the top 10 of this week in 1970. And we're going to do that, but as I was looking at these songs, I didn't recognize a lot of them. More than half of the top 10 I did not recognize, and I realized that by the time I was 20 years old in 1970, I was 20, I was not listening to top 40 radio too much anymore. I was into albums, the Beatles and all that stuff, you know. And so some of this stuff is lost on me. So I thought maybe we'll do the top 10 60 years ago. So I looked at that list of top 10 songs 60 years ago. And that was great. I knew most of that. But I started thinking, what about 65 years ago, 1960? And I looked at that and I knew a few. So what I decided to do here is I'm going to give you all three of them. And then if you would like, you can email me at babyboomertales@gmail.com and tell me your preferences. Now you have to do that next couple weeks for me to crunch the numbers and decide which way to go. So I'm going to do each era here, and then I'll do a little thing where I give my opinion at the end of each era. So let's start here while we have some time. This is 55 years ago. The top 10 popular songs this week in 1970. Number 10, I'll Never Fall in Love Again, Dionne Warwick. Number 9, Jam Up and Jelly Tight, Tommy Roe. Number 8, Without Love There's Nothing, Tom Jones. Number 7, Don't Cry Daddy, Rubberneckin', Elvis Presley. Number 6, Leaving on a Jet Plane, Peter, Paul and Mary. Number 5, Whole Lot of Love, Living Loving Maid, She's Just a Woman, Led Zeppelin. Number 4, Someday We'll Be Together, Diana Ross and the Supremes. Number 3, I Want You Back, Jackson 5. Number 2, Venus, The Shocking Blue. Number 1, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, B.J. Thomas. So I could continue doing that, I believe. I still recognize songs, and soon Crosby, Stills and Nash and all that stuff will come along. But when we get to the end of the 70s, like 76 or so, disco is so prevalent, and I did not care for that at all. So I don't know what I'm going to do there with 55 years ago. The next one, top 10 pop songs 60 years ago. That's the top 10 pop songs this week in 1965. Number 10, Keep Searching, We'll Follow the Sun, Del Shannon. Number 9, How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You, Marvin Gaye. Number 8, The Jerk, The Larks. Number 7, Mr. Lonely by Bobby Vinton. Number 6, The Name Game, Shirley Ellis. Number 5, Come See About Me, The Supremes. Number 4, I Feel Fine, The Beatles. Number 3, Love Potion Number 9, The Searchers. Number 2, You've Lost That Loving Feeling, The Righteous Brothers. And the number 1 song, Downtown by Petula Clark. Now we'll do one 65 years ago. That's the top 10 pop songs this week in 1960. Number 10, Among My Souvenirs, Connie Francis. Number 9, Pretty Blue Eyes, Steve Lawrence. Number 8, The Village of St. Bernadette, Andy Williams. Number 7, Teen Angel, Mark Dinning. Number 6, Go Jimmy Go, Jimmy Clanton. Number 5, Way Down Yonder in New Orleans, Freddie Cannon. Number 4, The Big Hit, Miss Tony Fisher. Number 3, El Paso, Marty Robbins. Number 2, Why, Frankie Avalon. And the number 1 song, 65 years ago this week, Running Bear by Johnny Preston. So email me if you have a preference and you'd like to see your preference be on this podcast. We do the top 10 once a month usually. So we'll just see how this shakes out. We'll see what happens. I'll be back in about a month with some results. The title of today's episode is In My Life, not the Beatles version. That's a great song by the Beatles, by the way. It's probably my all-time favorite song. So I'm going to do part of my life on this episode. I'm going to start when I'm 26 years old and end it when I was 49. If this seems to do well and I'm happy with it, I may try to do other eras of my life also. One when I was a kid, one around now, and one right before I turned 26, probably from the time I was 18. Now, all 313 previous episodes, I talk about my life quite often, and some of this stuff will overlap. I'll mention it. I won't go into much detail. I've got 23 years here I've got to cover in not that much time. So when I was 26 years old, I worked at a mine up in the mountains, north central Colorado, Rocky Mountains. It wasn't a bad job. It was really the best paying job in the county. They employed something like several thousand people that came from all over, especially the Denver area. It was probably about an hour and 20-minute drive from the west side of Denver to that mine. It was a little over an hour drive for me on the other side of the Continental Divide. I had to go over a mountain pass to get there. I was in the carpool with Hoopy and Teddy and Two Thumb Plum. I had worked at the mill for a mine that was there previously, and then at the tailings pond, and that was a wonderful job. But that little mine shut down, and I had to transfer over to this mine. And I went 3,000 feet down into the mountain every day. Every day I went to work, I went down, down, down into that mountain. Well, one day, as we had just gotten home from graveyard shift was midnight until 8 in the morning. My carpool, whoever was driving that day, everyone parked at their house. And so we were at my house, and our little thing we would do after we got home is we'd all go in during the day and watch the Gong Show. Remember that? Chuck Barris, it was a great show. So we were sitting there watching the Gong Show, and I got a call, and it was from a girl named Vicky that worked at the grocery store across the street, and said, "Can you come over here a minute? I need to speak with you." And I went over there. I think I left the Gong Show to go talk to Vicky. And she introduced me to this girl named Kim, and it was an awkward moment, but I asked Kim out. And before I knew it, Kim and I were dating. After a while, we moved in together, and approximately a year after we met, we got married. This was in a little town called the Icebox Town, just about 15 miles away from my hometown. Well, we lived there for a while, and then the old couple that owned the place wanted to sell this little house, and they offered it to us, and I turned them down. It did not have a rock foundation. It had railroad ties, and that was all well and fine up in that country. There are no termites or anything, but I passed on it, and we moved to my hometown. Well, through that, we had 2 babies. I changed my profession from being a miner to white collar, and I eventually found my way working for Jay at the Trading Post, and that was a wonderful job. It was a high-end Western wear store. that Jay's dad and my Uncle Charlie had opened back in the 1940s. I stayed there for years, raising my family, had met Jesus, and changed my life from being a low-out, blue-collar worker that really did like pot a whole lot. Smoke a doober and drink a beer, and I used to think all was right with the world. Till all of a sudden, my whole social circle changed, and my quality of life went up, and my family grew, and it was a wonderful thing. Eventually, we started a department store, and life was really good. We owned a little house up there, and our children started school. And then one year, a terrible economic crisis hit that part of the United States, and we couldn't weather the storm. And we ended up moving to the Kansas City area. And looking back, I was a most fortunate man, because all I lost was stuff, my house and my business. And I kept my family. My marriage was intact. My children were okay. I didn't have any kind of nervous breakdown or anything. And we started our life over, basically. And we grew and flourished in the Midwest. To start with, I had a little lawn business, and it was all designed to take the stress level that I had experienced for so long away. And it did its job. It really did. You're out there mowing lawns 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. Stress will eventually leave you. I eventually got a job being a salesman, and I left that lawn business. It was just temporary when I started it, and that's fine. We had a wonderful church family, and I've created many, many friends that are still dear friends to this day. We ended up buying a house in a bedroom community outside of the Kansas side of the Kansas City metro area, suburbs. And my kids grew and entered junior high and later high school, and they flourished, and life was good. I had a good job. Then I got a better job, being a CFO of a company, and everything was good. And then we decided we'd like to move to the country. My youngest daughter had graduated from high school, and they had both left home, going to school, and Kim looked high and low, over and over, and we finally found a place. And we owned it a year before we built our house. And when we were moving from that little town that I raised my girls in to our new house out in the country, Kim's mom was helping us move. She had just made us dinner that night before we took another load to the house. The next day was the big moving day. The movers were scheduled to take all the heavy stuff, the fridge, the piano, boxes of books, all that stuff. And we took a load out to the house, and coming back, Kim tried calling her mom and no answer. And my wife is slow to become alarmed. And all of a sudden she said, "Something's not right." And I sped home. I remember going through this little town, 80 miles an hour, hoping a cop didn't catch me. And we made it home, and my mother-in-law was laying on the floor. She was conscious, but she said how she had just become very, very ill. Well, we got her situated in a bed, but during the night she became ill again, just throwing up and throwing up. And Kim said, "We've got to take her to the hospital." And going there, she threw up again, and I wondered how in the world she had anything to throw up anymore. We got to the hospital and in the emergency room, they got her in right away and looked at her and told her that she was having congestive heart failure. I was out trying to park our van, but Kim was in there with her. And what Kim told me, that as soon as they told her that, Jeannie, my mother-in-law, looked at Kim and her eyes got big and she went, "Really?" and passed out and never regained consciousness. It's funny how life will take you from highs to lows, back to highs. And in between is the regular, everyday living that you spend 99% of your time at. If I do these again, maybe we'll pick up on the next day, us moving to the country. Or perhaps my next one will be when I was 18 and I left home. I don't know yet. We'll just see. My life has definitely been blessed. I've been pretty much healthy all my life. God blessed me with a wife that was handpicked, I do believe. Children that have given me grandchildren and blessed my heart so much. We have a beautiful place that I can sit and do a podcast and look out my window and just smile. I've had wonderful pets over my life and great friends. Well, next time we won't do all the 3 different top 10s, because I know that did take a bunch of time. And maybe I'll touch on this again and again. I don't know. I do know that I appreciate you listening to this podcast. When I first started doing it, it was just a form of therapy. And now I'm 75 years old, and it's what I do. That and about a million other things, but I have to take time to do this. Always be kind. There's no better way. I'll be back next Wednesday. That's the plan. Peace out.